So yeah, we have fellow defender Nicholas in the house.
Hi. Yeah, I don't always go by fellow defender Nicholas, but I do like the fellow defender moniker. It's really nice. Sort of impromptu joining here. I work full-time LST for our local GDC here in Madison. Also in the IWW, so it's fun stuff. Excited to see what we're talking about.
That's what's up. And fellow defender CV in the house.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right. Yeah, so fucking one of the things we've been doing recently is like organizing towards September 20th climate strike. CV, what is September 20th climate strike?
So this is primarily youth, but also some adults being involved in the organizing too, but a primarily youth-led action to strike on Friday. So a lot of high school students and college students will be leaving the classroom and going down to MG&E, which is our energy provider here in Madison, which primarily has a monopoly over the city. So we'll be going there first to have a protest about transferring to renewable sources of energy, getting away from coal, fracking, those sorts of things. And then they'll be marching from there to the state capitol and holding an occupation in the capitol for as long as their permit goes. That's all I can say for sure. But they'll be holding an occupation there and delivering a series of letters to the governor, Tony Evers, to declare a statewide climate emergency.
I was going to say, that's awesome. How many people are we expecting at this? Or, is it a pretty big event? Sorry, I don't mean to blow up your spot.
No, I mean, when we went to the organizing meeting and met with the youth, and they said, we're expecting as many as 2,000 people, I thought, in any other circumstance, I would think that that's ridiculous. And I would say, all right, maybe they're a little ambitious in their youth, but these high school and college freshmen were more put together than any adults I have seen organized in this city for a very long time. So I'm actually inclined to trust their opinion here. So I mean, it could be a pretty significant turnout. I mean, I'm hopeful it is. I'm excited to see what ends up happening, but it seems like we might have quite a few people.
Yeah, and it's an issue that, I mean, it goes across so many boundaries. Like, it doesn't really matter who you are, where you're from. Like, climate change is something that pretty much everyone can agree on getting behind, and I've seen that in Madison before too, just like someone that's like, I think her name was Lydia, I want to say, helped with like one of the women's march things, and like, she was, I think, a junior at the time, and like just killed it, just like was like really on top of her game, and like, like talking with everyone, like, really like putting in the time and energy to organize. It's really, really cool when you see that.
Yeah, we need to have 2,000 people out at least, right? Because it's fucking the price is too huge.
Yeah,
to fucking not. You know what I'm saying? So I know the high schools are all planning on like striking, skipping school and fucking going to all the East High, and then walking to the Capitol. That brings up something that I had a debate with a comrade a while ago. It was like, who was convinced that like, high schoolers and young folks are not revolutionary, and they like, the only reason they get involved in these things is so they can like skip school and fucking get a day off. Have you heard these before? Have you heard these critiques before?
I have, but I also think idleness can be revolutionary. So, I mean, more power to them if that's a reason, but...
Yeah, it turns out that it doesn't matter if you're striking because you don't want to go to work or you're striking to be revolutionary. The impact is that you're striking. So,
yeah. I've also heard someone kind of like callously say like, what are you trying to like earn a major or something? When I've been involved in like politics in town. And like I'm not even, I'm not in college or anything, and I hadn't been my entire time.
What is that a reference to? Like, if you only do activism, if
it's like implied that like I must be doing this in pursuit of some kind of major or academic achievement, just for the what's important about it to me. You know what I mean?
Have y'all about Extinction Rebellion, which is blowing up everywhere across the world?
Yeah,
Roger Hallam, who like kind of started the thing, I guess allegedly did it as a PhD thesis and sort of like came up with all these theories and shit. around like what an organization that could seek to win climate justice would be like. My comrades at Dissident Island Radio in London have a lot of critiques of Extinction Rebellion, but also a lot of good ways of approaching there, because it's just like any huge mass organization. There's tons of radicals and people with great politics inside of it that don't necessarily reflect the hierarchy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just the stage of the game we're at, too. It's like there is not a very successful left movement. There is not something that looks like it's going to be the future. So whatever we have now clearly needs like heavy, heavy critique if we're going to wind up anywhere productive. So I think, that kind of stuff is not something we should be worried about, and is something we should treat as inevitable for any of the movements that are going on right now.
Yeah, if I could actually sort of jump in on that point a little bit. I think you brought up Lydia, who's an organizer here in town, and I'd done some organization with her, and I think, one of the differences between, say, like the women's movement is that it can sort of maintain like an insular liberal mentality towards approaching some of these reforms, whereas like the struggle for this defeating an impending climate catastrophe is life or death right now in like a very existential sort of way, and it's going to, no matter what, it's really going to radicalize people really hard, and especially when they see that the existing structures aren't going to do anything to help their cause. And so it's important that we offer that critique to these people now, because it's only going to radicalize them one way or another, right? Like so I think it's really important to offer that critique.
Yeah, because I mean it's one of those things where like we're at the point where we can't ignore it anymore, especially if you're younger. If you're a younger person, like it's stuff that you're going to deal with within your lifetime. So it's definitely something that has impacted my life and altered the course that I've decided to take in life. It's like when that there is some kind of I'd hate to say apocalypse, but I mean, this thing we're bringing upon ourselves or whatever. It mobilizes you. It's like burning a fire up under our asses, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that there's a part of at least all of us in this room that maybe questions the efficacy of, pressuring the governor to declare a climate emergency, especially one that's so based on kind of like the power grid, which I think obviously does need improvements, and a lot of infrastructure around power needs improvements.
Yeah.
But what they're not going to be willing to interrupt, a liberal governor like Evers, is something like the Foxconn project that is, polluting a bunch of our water, taking a bunch of water out of Lake Michigan every year, or all of those deep well drilling that's going on in a lot of the farmlands. And so, I think while everyone in this room maybe questions some of the efficacy, I do think that it will be both important and inevitable that younger people are going to see the non-responsiveness of the system much earlier. I'm really interested to see how they'll react to that, what kind of radicalization potentially that can lead to, and how we can harness that.
Yeah. What was you were saying about the drilling in the farm fields?
Yeah, a lot of the farmland and kind of the around where the lake is, that kind of like east side of the state, there's a lot of like very deep well drilling, and I know that there have been homes that were built as kind of lakefront homes around some of these smaller lakes around the state, because Wisconsin does have a lot of lakes all over the state that are just like sitting on the edge of a patch of grass, because this deep water drilling has literally sucked water from so many different reservoirs around the state.
I've heard of that stuff. Yeah, and you're right. It is stuff that is piling up, and it's been going on for a while, especially since Walker was in office or whatever, and the deregulation that happened there. And I've heard that like multiple times about lakes disappearing and shit, and no one that's just it's got to be jarring for the people that live there, like more than anyone else. You know what I mean? Because like they walk outside to what used to be a lake, and then it's just barren. So I'd be interested to talk to those people that are out in like rural areas that this is affecting like firsthand. But that stuff's going to be coming up in the near future, and you're right, and our youth are going to figure out ways to fight that. You
Yeah,
know?
after they like risk their livelihoods and futures, and nothing happens and shit. That's definitely a radicalizing moment or a potential one. Fucking yeah, you
Yeah.
mentioned the putting the pressure on Governor Evers because we were talking about like Governor Evers trying to demand that he do a climate emergency or like declare a state of emergency, and like yeah, that's an interesting topic because it's like fucking isn't like a I think I asked this earlier somewhere else recently, but isn't like a state of emergency declaration sort of like the same as martial law in a way where it gives the the highest most fucking office with the most power even more power in the state, and like sort of like yeah how yeah like just seeing the critiques and like hierarchical anti-state politics, how they wouldn't necessarily agree with that. How does that fucking mix well with that? Or like, yeah, what do y'all think about that?
Well, I mean, in the context of Wisconsin, which is a state that was historically known for, a very open legislative process, it's interesting to see just how far democracy can backslide in one place over time, where now it's like our only course of, our only recourse or course of option is to ask the governor to come in and to take power like that. But I mean, I think you're right. And I think, again, it begs those same questions of, is it possible for an executive that's so wedded to these corporate deals to bringing jobs into the state, through all of these like massive kind of like capital or corporate welfare programs, whether or not we can really trust someone like that with this level of power, that they'll use it in a way that will benefit us and benefit the environment.
Yeah, no, that's always that's always like the gamble that you take when you vote, when you go into the polls and like vote for your team or whatever, and like it's just because like Mary Burke recently has been doing some supporting some really shitty ideas about like the homeless population and everything.
Oh,
like
yeah?
there's like it's the thing is like it's kind of the reason that like lobbyists are
Mary
like,
Burke's still on the school board?
No.
No,
Is that-
she resigned.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like part of the reason that like lobbyists and all that stuff like is effective is because they there's people that put money into people that are just talking in the ears of people all the time, and if you don't have someone at the table in the room at the table, then your voice is just not heard, and that's what seems to happen time and time again is they get closed off from the real members of the community instead of just the kind of members that spend the most money in the community.
I can't think of a time in a Western liberal democracy when giving extra power to an executive has ever done anything to benefit anyone other than those already in those positions of power,
Yeah.
No reason to trust that it will be any different.
We really romanticize that idea that there's a
Benevolent benefactor.
a hero king, philosopher king, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we really, that's really ingrained in us is that someone's good or evil, and like because of how good or evil they are, they can blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's just
I think that definitely, that critique that we can offer fucking folks in the movement, if it does end up being something that's employing some fucking system-changing tactics, that fucking definitely have to think about that and, be really specific about the demands, which I haven't really heard a lot of discussion about. They weren't talking about specific demands at the meeting, were they? Or
Not in this meeting, but in past meetings and on the kind of public facing information they have, they do have
Okay.
a few concrete demands. One of them
Yeah,
is
what is-
to transfer, as I mentioned before, to renewable energy. Right now, the state is slated to do that by 2050, but demanding it of MG&E by 2030.
okay.
2050 is the current plan.
That's what Evers came up with, right? And came
that's
out with,
not,
and that's why people
that's
are
not enough.
are like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that needs to be cut down a decade or two.
What are the other demands? That's just one of them, right?
That is just one of them. I want to say the others were kind of smaller than that, and so I definitely will say that this is a set of demands that definitely needs to grow, especially if the movement's going to grow, because it is so centered on Madison right now, where it's demanding a statewide climate emergency, but the demands are primarily things that make sense in the context of Madison.
Yeah.
We have a lot of those pipelines that go through rural areas. I think a lot of places where we can generate excitement or generate mobilization in some of those rural areas. So I think that they will need to expand it, but I'm interested to see how they go about that and who they bring into a coalition to get that done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have a lot of people from like farms or anything, or anyone from like farmlands that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Sorry. I'm just curious because it would be so interesting to have them in the room.
Not specific. I mean, I've only been to that medic meeting yesterday. But when you drive out west, say towards Iowa, and it's very rural, Dodge County and stuff like that, there's a lot of organization against these big power transmission lines that they want to build in the state called the ATC. And you'll see just farm after farm is adorned with these homemade signs that say like no to the ATC. And over like the 2 or 3 years I've been driving that way to visit my family, I've seen the signs get progressively more well funded. So now they're like printing signs and stuff like that. So at least in that regard, there is some spirit of anti-corporatism among some of those farmers, or at least the semblance of it.
Yeah, and I have an uncle that was actually talking one holiday. He's from a rural area. Generally thought that he was kind of a conservative dude, but he was very, very pro-union, and like he was talking about the fact that part of the reason that his community thrived or whatever was because he and his other workers were part of a union, and it was nice to hear someone from that area praise it so much.
Oh, this is the comment I was saving for over out there, but it's like you got fucking the UAWs on strike. I heard that the entire state of Oregon, teachers and a bunch of other sectors and the public sector workers are possibly going to go on strike. I heard that there was teachers in Chicago might go on strike in a couple weeks, and fucking motherfucking aluminum factory in Canada, they're doing a fucking occupation sit down shit.
That's cool.
Preventing any production from happening, taking over the space and doing lots of partying and shit, and fucking I guess they're gonna get fined something like $1,000 per person and like $10,000 for the union that's what the Canadian government is threatening, because apparently it's against whatever their NLRB or NLRA, their National Labor Relations Association agency, something
like that.
Yeah.
But
version A.
Were they were they union, or is this like just a factory that's just regular non-union workers?
Yeah, it's a union.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna pose this question earlier. What do y'all think? Wildcat strikes more powerful than fucking brass called strikes, or not, or same?
Wait, refresh my memory. Brass called strikes, is that like union strikes?
I used a bunch of union terminology there.
Yeah. For the listeners, maybe clarify.
I'm here for the layman.
Brass is like the upper management of the union, which tend to have their interests are the opposite of the folks who are the workers who are in the union, because they benefit off of the union surviving and not necessarily the workers getting paid anymore.
My brother Scott could tell you all about that.
Yeah, so that's the brass. And then a wildcat strike is when the workers go on strike even though the brass, if you will, is saying not to.
Yeah, like a lot of those teacher strikes last year.
Yeah, I was definitely in favor of the wildcat strikes.
Is it more powerful? Why not?
Anyone else want to go first?
I mean, there's certainly merits in building up to a strike action, right? You need strike funds and an ability to care for your family while you're not making money from this corporation. It's a big sacrifice, and I think getting the community involved and organizing in that way is gonna make it a lot longer lasting and hopefully more impactful. But wildcat strikes are awesome, right? We all love to see that rank and file democracy take hold and just seize the workplace, and it's really powerful sight to see that sort of solidarity just maybe materialize or maybe sort of foment under the surface and then just really rupture in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point about the fact that there is the benefit when you're organizing it more or whatever with the brass about the benefits. I hadn't thought about that. The fact that you do there are like a certain set of like types of strikes you're allowed to do or whatever, right? Like, and then if you do those strikes, then you can get your benefits. Is that correct?
Oh, you know about it?
I've never been in a union.
If you do the
Still.
illegal strike, what happens? Well, I just named one thing that happens. Like the Canadian government's like gonna fine the union. Do you know
That's
anything
true.
else?
Yeah. And that's a legal strike, right?
Yeah, there's like an illegal occupation, technically that they're doing in Canada.
So wait, no. So that's a wildcat strike.
I don't think it is wildcat though. The brass is involved in it too.
Okay,
In
so
that case,
oh, so the brass is like playing ball.
yeah.
Okay.
Because it was in their interest as well, I guess. Because
Okay.
the plant was going to get shut down.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely opposed to like union bureaucracy in some way that's like cumbersome or unaccountable to the base.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining that there's plenty of union structures where your union steward is like democratically elected and up for recall at any moment. And in that case, if that's the brass, quote unquote, then well, it's not the worst incarnation of brass, and it makes sense that they'd be on board with something. I don't know the situation if that's applicable to this particular situation, but.
And I think, too, depending on what kind of industry we're talking about, the participation of the brass can be a really big boost if, for example, the rank and file are easily replaceable. If it's something that can be, a kind of capital that can be easily moved, then it may require getting people involved who are not so easily replaceable to prevent, what we saw like with Stone Creek here and a lot of other places where any attempt from the rank and file to unionize has just meant closing down the shop and relocating it because the capital is much more mobile than the workers are. And so I think in a situation like that, if you can get people involved to make it more difficult to just simply replace them, then it can be powerful. But again, it is leaning into the existing power structures and relying on them in some way to get a concession out of the boss.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Liam?
Me?
What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. That's why I was asking, because I didn't have any well-formulated ideas around it. Oh, I think the wildcat strikes, you mentioned like there's resources there when you get the brass on board that might not be there without the brass. I'm not sure if that's true or not, if like who has control of the coffers, but that sounds right. I know at least that the brass, they get paid a lot of money or whatever relative to some folks anyways. But also a benefit of not having access to money organizing a wildcat strike is that you're like the workers would have to be organizing with themselves in the broader community like pretty massively in order to make that happen, and so there'd be a lot more like mutual aid that happened and like rebuilding of the communes and sort of like a community that's pretty fucking revolutionary, would result out of that work more than just getting like, I don't know, having money. Is my theory that I can think of.
Yeah, there's some a community building element to a wildcat strike, that because you have to then rely on the community more.
Yeah, it suddenly defeats that alienating sort of atomizing nature of capitalism where like each family unit is its own discrete separate thing and all the reproductive labor falls on like the housewife or something, and it sort of forces all that reproductive labor into the commons once again, and it sort of helps to initiate a reestablishment of that for whatever period of time.
Yeah, I definitely have. I'm not sure if it's the. I feel like it's a lot of workers' movements where the family of the workers and the other neighbors have gotten together, whether it be for picket lines or for just helping out with extra work or labor things. Those have always been really powerful movements that we kind of look back at and kind of draw inspiration from. So in that sense, if it can be something that's really impactful to the community and change it for good, like do some lasting change.
Yeah, and I think the opposite too is true, for especially something like state employees in Wisconsin, for whom even even attempting to incite a strike is illegal and criminalized. You can be fired. I think you can definitely be fined. I think you can also be potentially incarcerated. I think it might be a arrestable offense if it gets to a certain point. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that is accurate. At the very least, there is some pretty severe state oversight. But that's the opposite situation where those jobs aren't mobile. You can't really outsource a lot of the state's labor and a lot of the jobs that people do within the state, like healthcare and the government bureaucracy and all of the university jobs. And so, for state employees, having strength in numbers, having all those rank and file strike is extremely necessary, because if you just have that concentrated massive power, if you just have them strike, then they'll very easily be targeted by the state under those laws. And so, it really does depend on the context you're organizing in.
I wonder if any state or any fucking unions at all are involved in the climate strike on Friday. I know we talked about it. I don't know if anybody... I know some people have been talking to unions, but
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see folks showing up and out.
Yeah. Is there a Facebook page?
There is, from what I understand, a Facebook page. And also, I don't know about unions that are kind of like involved in the way that you mean, but when we talked to some of the youth who were organizing it yesterday, they did mention, this is something I thought was really awesome, that they had been talking to union cab people about arranging transportation for the march for people who maybe are less mobile or have access needs, to try to transport them from the starting point at MG&E to the Capitol. And so I'm excited to know the outcome of that. My hope, obviously, is that our union cab company would be excited to participate in something like that. So I believe that they are.
Yeah, that'd be hot.
Yeah.
And on a funny point, Union Cab has no union. It's a workers' cooperative or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a co-op. Unlike the fucking... Oh, yeah, speaking of other unions, y'all heard that the Willie Street Co-op won their vote, right?
Yeah.
United Electrical Workers.
Significant margin, right?
Mm-hmm.
86% or something.
Oh, really? That's what's up. Yeah, I guess the fucking... it probably had something to do with... I mean, this one went way quicker. I remember last time, a few years ago, when they did a drive and the UFCW was leading it up. That shit was like weeks, maybe a couple months or something. You were seeing all these anti-union shirts and fucking buttons that like they had got folks to wear. And so I think part of the success was that, just the tactics where they were like underground organizing it, and then they went public, and it was like maybe 2 weeks or something, or 3 weeks from then to the vote. And like the fucking bullshit, what are they, like the union busting lawyers that they usually hire didn't have time to go in and do their thing. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. It's good to organize underground discreetly for a while like that. I mean, it's very helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the safe way to go, at least for a little bit, because you don't know who's going to, react to what, Like there could be someone at I don't know, one of the school newspapers or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
gets a hold of some information, and then all of a sudden you're hearing from the dean or something.
CV, you're like you deal with like fucking researching like fascism and fascists, at least the contemporary fascism and shit like that, right? A lot. And so like, do you what about like eco-fascism? What's that about? Is it true? So it's true that like the fascists are also like on board with the climate strike specifically, or like just with environmental justice? Is that the case that you're finding?
Well, there's a couple different varietals of even eco-fascists. So I don't know that they would all be on board with a climate strike. It depends on whether or not they're the kind who see the only way for us to preserve the climate being kind of the destruction of America, hashtag the Great Satan, as they would say, and whether or not...
Like Thanos was right.
Right, pretty much. And so they would see something like, declaring a climate emergency. They would see that transfer of executive power as being something that's threatening to them. But a lot of them do also understand the exigency of climate change. And so some of them would be more on board. Some of them are a little bit more into sort of formal conservationist politics, or even came out of the environmentalist movement and, are big fans of Ted Kaczynski and whatnot. So there definitely are people who are on board with radical environmentalism, but not always from a standpoint we would necessarily want to support.
Right.
Huh? Are any? Do you guys know of any of those guys like they're being involved in the thing on the 20th?
I don't believe so. There are some who are very involved, what they would call like the Green Pill movement, about 45 minutes outside of Madison. There's some of that, but not a lot close enough where they would likely turn out to this climate strike.
So do they end up like advocating like genocide as a solution? Well, obviously, I guess so, right? They're Malthusist type of like, but with racism type of situation.
Yeah, there are ones who say that, the world is overpopulated, and then there are those who say not only is the world overpopulated, or even if the world is not overpopulated, that non-whites pollute at a greater rate, and so they need to be either, barred entry from the West, where living at our standard of living would cause too much pollution, and so we just get to have it and they don't, or some iteration of like we should have a genocide.
That just seems so. Is that
Can you-
remotely true? The
I was gonna say,
non-whites
can you break
pollute
that
more?
down for a second?
Because you think because when you think out the top of your dome, you think like the global South, where most non-whites, which is majority non-whites, whatever, are the ones who aren't polluting as much.
Yeah, it's like not only
is that true at all?
racist, it's just patently false.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. It just seems like there's a few weird assertions there. you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, they'll point to things
Which
like
it always
obviously
is,
a
but-
post-industrial country is going to pollute less per capita than a country that is currently industrializing. But part of the problem is that the IMF
true.
and the World
Yeah.
Bank, like they give out development loans that encourage countries in the global South to basically export Western pollution, literally sometimes literally in the form of like recycling will be shipped to those other countries and processed there and
Yeah.
then shipped back as recycled materials, or just encouraging them to take on a lot of the manufacturing that happens in the West right now. And so to some extent that's true, but it's a really bad immaterial diagnosis of the climate problem.
Yeah,
It's not a fair diagnosis. It's like, even if that's true, it's our fault.
yeah.
Just because we export the fumes elsewhere doesn't mean that we are absolved of that.
Yeah, and I mean other countries also don't test and keep active like 8,000 nuclear warheads at any given time, or
Yeah.
and also, countries like China are also reforesting at some of the highest rates in the world. And so not only do we export the pollution there and then blame them for it, but they also make much better recovery efforts, planting trees and things like that, than the U.S. does.
Yeah, this goes along with the continuum of like fucking, you have like a racist system, and then you marginalize people and oppress and repress them, and then you say, oh look, they're repressed and oppressed, like they're in prison at a higher population, therefore there's something wrong with them. But like, using like environmental racism in this case for that same logic, bullshit.
Well, yeah, it's taking what works about it is it takes something from the real world and like reverses it. It takes what's actually happening and then explaining it in like the reverse way, which is like a really clever way to
use a bunch of data. And
that's how you get someone into thinking that it's true, because it sounds like something that's true, because they're distorting, I guess, I don't know what it is.
Is environmental racism a big thing for like the climate strike coming up? Is that coming up a lot, or is it just like not necessarily? I wonder.
What I've heard has been a fairly colorblind, if not whitewashed, approach to, everyone needs to live on a healthy planet. I would say that the group of organizers that I've been familiar with are probably not the ones who would be recklessly deterred from pro-environmental policies because they help brown people, which is something that is not true for a lot of people in the environmental movement, or eco-fascists, for example, in particular. But it's definitely not something that I've seen talked about so far. But I also would say that I have not seen all their material, so I wouldn't rule out the possibility, but it's not something that I've seen put at the front very much.
Oh, is this so in this action, is it going to be mostly talking about the environment on a world scale, or is it going to be talking about it on a kind of state or local scale, or do you know? That, depends on what everyone's speeches are, but I mean, like,
So one of the key things that's happening, at least on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, is that they are doing a live stream of, and correct me if I get her name wrong, Greta Thunberg. They're doing a live stream of the speech she's giving somewhere, I think in New York, if I'm not mistaken, which is probably at the UN in that case. So it's
wow.
I'm assuming there's going to be strong internationalist tendencies within the discourse because of her position as non-American and speaking to the UN, and yeah.
A world without cops is possible. The force of the folks is unstoppable. The heads of the bushes all choppable. And every state is toppable. Balance the 12 and stop all the bull. Got this ourselves, we're incomparable. They're really quite useless to strike at the hole. Black body beating until prison's full. Every place the cops stay. Every way we can fray. Every day the man pray. They be digging over their graves. Now fuck the police, fuck the police. 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 12 on the block and they phonies. Fuck around now, there's dead homies. Serve and protect the class cronies. Bottles them first and we growing. We be out smoking on stogies. Sipping on that elite slowly. Hugging each other like rolling. Drugs in the air but no worry. You need it, you got it, no bow. The street now be hungry, we full. Complete stopping hunger global. We see cops as heroes no more. Delete the street beating races. Sweep the police from our spaces. Greet the police in workplaces. Barricades cages on bases. A world without cops is possible. The force of the folks is unstoppable. The heads of the bushes all choppable. And every state is toppable. Balance the 12 and stop all the bull. Got this ourselves, we're incomparable. They're really quite useless to strike at the hole. Black body beating until prison's full. Every place the cops stay. Every way we can fray. Every day the man pray. They be digging over their graves now. Fuck the police, fuck the police. 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 With eyes to the twinkling twilighted sky. A beautiful picture of society. A world with no 12 women doing just fine. Dismantle the myths of a police state mind. There's violence there when you're calling a swine. You argue you need them, you sound as a knight. No cost with the Amish, they're doing just fine. Whole blocks take the time to become prime to rewind. These notions of violently placating crime. Devotions of frightfully race-hating slime. Commotions for fighting the masses they find. Promotions for killing black bots when they grind. Hey, a world without cops is possible. The force of the folks is unstoppable. The heads of the bushes all choppable. And every state is toppable. Balance the 12 and stop all the bull. Got this ourselves, we're incomparable. They're really quite useless to strike at the hole. Black body beating until prison's full. Every place the cops stay. Every way we can fray. Every day the man pray. They be digging over their graves now. Fuck the police, fuck the police. 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 Every day we can fray. Every day the man pray. Every way we can fray. They be digging over their graves now. Fuck the police, fuck the police. Fuck the police, fuck the police. Fuck the police, fuck the police. Fuck the police, fuck the police.
I was under the impression it was Greta Thunberg until looking who's Democracy Now?
Sounds German when you say it like
what's
that.
the right, exactly. What's the Democracy Now? Amy Goodman
Yes.
has been pronouncing it how she does, and
Sorry,
it's like
Kevin.
it's like Greta Thunberg or something like that. The G is actually like a Y, according to Amy Goodman, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I just wanted to mention I heard on It's Going Down podcast, which is dope. Y'all should check that out. Just drop some shit. But there's also like a call from incarcerated folks on Friday, September 20th, to like speak out against the Biden crime bill, because that's like another issue that's coming up because of Democratic fucking debates and shit. And like, Biden was the author of the 94 crime bill that had all this horrible, repressive, racist fucking language in it, and like he like refuses to like own it up.
Is that the one that like passed during like the Clinton years?
Yeah.
94, right?
Yeah,
Oh, so
94.
that's the really bad one.
Yeah, it's a really bad one.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
does the crack it does like the crack cocaine is like 10 times the sentence for powder cocaine shit.
Does it
And
talk
like
about
that's
super
that's where
predators?
the super predator
Yeah,
language
yeah,
came
yeah.
from, and where fucking Clinton was talking about that. But yeah, that's interesting. I'd be nice to take that shit up on Friday.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think mandatory minimums for drug convictions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
3 strikes laws too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I'm just gonna put all the bad legislation into
It was
this
It
moment.
was a
like-
horrible bill.
It was like the
And
second
Biden
second
literally
wave.
wrote it.
It was like the second wave of the war on drugs. You know, if the war on drugs had waves like music genres, it
Yeah.
was like the second wave,
Mhm.
the war on drugs.
Right.
Well, really, I mean,
Like
it
one of
started
the-
under Nixon, so I would imagine that
Yeah.
Reagan would be the second wave, and then this would be the third wave under Clinton.
Well, I guess I always considered
True that.
Reagan the first wave just because Nixon didn't quite get the ball rolling as much as he wanted to. But I get what you mean. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I probably shouldn't take.
It was just more in the
shadow.
shadows, right?
There's like this one legislative aid or just this aid to the Nixon administration that was
Yeah.
released from prison. You've probably seen this quote floating around, but essentially
Yeah.
it's that like the war on drugs was created to serve two purposes, and one was like to associate the hippies with marijuana and black people with heroin, and then to criminalize both of those drugs heavily, simply because
Yeah.
you can't arrest people just for their political views. But this meant that they could go into anyone's home for any reason under the pretext of drugs to break up any group of people that they
Yeah.
viewed the anti-war left and the radical black liberation movements as threats to the status quo and the state and the capitalist machinery.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
It was pretty strong under Nixon, if I had to guess.
Yeah, he just wasn't.
More covert about it.
He wasn't as popular
Started-
of a.
Like started
Well, I
the
guess no, he was pretty
DEA,
popular. What am I
right?
talking
I
about?
mean,
I think so.
it was another organization before,
Yeah.
but kind of gave it its.
But yeah, it
Defining
really
purpose.
got into its stride in the Reagan years with Nancy Reagan.
Yeah, it was some bad shit with the welfare mothers rhetoric.
Oh,
Coded
yep, yeah.
dog
That's when
whistle
they started
shit.
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of these days, we should just do a whole episode about the history of the dog whistle language.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
you
cool.
know, like
We've been talking for a long time.
I know. yeah, that could be. That's gonna be a that could be a long. Like, if we get like a list going, we can really go through a lot.
Oh, so
But-
my daughter made. We went to a poster making party. She's 7. She's thoroughly indoctrinated. I'm trying to teach her not to be.
That's-
I might have
that's
done,
hard
done the
to-
anti-cop shit too much because she's kind of like maybe scared of cops, and I gotta teach her to not do that because that's not that great either. But I don't know. It's better than being like not scared of them, in my opinion. Anyways,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not good to be having anxiety about shit. But anyways, one of her signs was, we don't want ice, but we do want and then she has, I.C.E, and then she circled 2 glaciers, like we do want glaciers, ice.
Aw.
We want this ice, not that ice. And the other one was, we don't
That's
like
so-
cops.
The other one's
Just keep it classic.
Yeah.
Timeless.
Just we don't like cops.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We don't like cops.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
the ice thing was
controversial.
a little more like cryptic. You have to kind of decipher it. But the last one's just like, no, we don't like cops.
Yeah.
That's awesome. She's gonna be a real fighter. But it is hard to keep your kids away from indoctrination. If you live in the society.
And we live in a society.
Yeah. Because at some point they're gonna go to school and have Christmas. Christmas is come around. They're gonna be like, hey, where's my presents? All the consumerist stuff starts settling in,
And I was talking about, she's indoctrinated as being anti-cop, anti-ice, because I know that, because, had to do that before they got to her.
yeah,
It's important.
yeah, definitely.
And it stops. One of the big ways that people get converted to white nationalism, you often will see these like threads on Reddit where parents will post and they'll say, we are a kind, loving, liberal family, and I don't really know what happened. I don't understand how my child turned into this white nationalist. We've always taught, you have to mutually respect people based on their race and religion, but like liberal politics offer such a unsatisfying explanation for things like, disparate crime rates and things like that, really doesn't get into the structural and root problems there, that it's not very satisfying. And so, when kids go to school and they're taught to question things, which is a good impulse to teach kids, but you don't help them or guide them to answers, and you don't help them create a framework for understanding and processing contradictions in the world, then they start to question things, and they start to question things in school, and then all of a sudden they're really unmoored and don't know where to go, and that's how a lot of young people start to get drawn into white nationalism, looking for those answers. And so, indoctrination is one way to say it, but like inoculation is another way too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, because it is. You have to at some point get to the point where you understand contradiction and you understand how easy it is to make something sound correct, no matter how incorrect it is. And like until you kind of have that, like learn that, part of life, you can be maybe easily, taken into, what someone else is throwing out there. If it's, kind of authoritarian and, sounds inspiring and they're talking as if what they're saying is accurate. Jordan Peterson, cough, cough. Like then you kind of, you're going to be easily, drawn into, a bad place. But yeah, like that's because I like when I majored in philosophy in college, doesn't really matter too much. But one thing I learned is like you can both prove and disprove pretty much anything, if you really, really want to. And that's a really important lesson that you should learn maybe before college, maybe like way before college. Like that's important information. But
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Understandings of like right and wrong and justice and what's good and where to go.
Mhm.
These are like all socially constructed values, right? And so if your only exposure is to teachers who are making you say the Pledge of Allegiance every day and students who are going along with it whose parents aren't inoculating them, it's easy to see that as what is right or legitimate just because a lot of people are going along with these values or constructing them. So it's important to inoculate. I think that's a good way to place it, and we certainly can make arguments maybe to prove or disprove anything on some sort of theoretical basis,
Yeah.
but
On a
at the end of the day, there are
whatever.
there are material realities to people's existences, right? Like people's experience
Mhm.
of suffering
Yeah.
is real, and you can try to negate that or invalidate that, but that
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
is still real at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Because I mean, what I meant more about that is like, it's words are easily abused.
My mom's
Yeah.
used to be like,
regardless of what's actually
logic
real.
is some evil
Yeah.
shit because that's why Hitler was able to, take power. And she was like, didn't want me to study
Yeah.
logic and shit like that.
Well, yeah, like logic
But,
and
I mean,
logic
which is
alone.
it's cogent. That's a
is-
cogent
is-
argument.
Well, yeah, it's when it's logic and logic alone and reason alone without any compassion or without any empathy, then that is just inevitably going to get hijacked by whatever authoritarian is that is barking that your particular brand of that.
And
You
there's
know?
validity, and then there's cogence. Validity and cogency, and they're two different things. There's cogent arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, not always.
Actually, you made me think of a teacher that I had that really broke the mold in high school. Shout out to Miss DeForest Davis, but like she was like the most like I guess hippy dippy teacher that we ever had, and like she had us like sit in a circle rather than like your regular gridded pattern or whatever, so we could all see each other while we were talking. She always just had really cool radical ideas to share. And one day she assigned us the assignment was I want you to defy authority by the next class period.
Huh.
Everyone. So like we all decided to skip her class the next day to defy
Strike.
authority. And she
Nice.
was so proud of us.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's how cool of a teacher she was. Like, she assigned it, like, we skipped her class, and then she was proud that we did that because it meant that we, like, kind of understood, like, the lesson. Because, like, she was the authority in that case, and, like, we were defying her,
Yeah.
And, she was always, like, kind of trying to break the typical mold for us and stuff. In ways that some of my friends were not very comfortable with, some of my more conservative buddies in the class. But it was awesome. But yeah, it's I was lucky to have that experience, because it's something that even then when I was very conservative at the time, like it's stuff that I still think back to and remember that, kind of helped draw me out of that stuff eventually, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw this Real News Network thing. It was like witchcraft and libertarian socialism. There's this one YouTuber, I forget their name, but anyways, fucking they talked about, and the Real News Network host said that libertarian socialism, or no, this was the YouTuber that said that libertarian socialism was like this anti-hierarchical, way of thinking about things that also sees like the state as a valid driver for like political change, at least in the short term. I don't know if do y'all define libertarian socialism as that, or what do you think about that concept?
I guess, I mean, when I first heard the term, it sounded like a contradiction. I don't know, just because like the people that would describe themselves as libertarians were generally at odds with people that would describe themselves as socialists.
But the
you know what I mean?
The term, it was like the original term for like anarchism. I don't want like Kropotkin or fucking who's that horrible Proudhon?
Yeah.
Maybe he came up with this term or something, or that was libertarian socialism, right? Or were you talking about Proudhon?
I mean, I don't really know much about Proudhon, but
Right.
Other than he had some anti-Semitic things to say.
Yeah.
I know libertarian is like a word that arose like right before, during the French Revolution, during some of those formations, and was essentially, actually, to quote Murray Rothbard, who is one of the architects in stealing the word from the left and towards the right, and came up with right-wing libertarianism.
Yeah.
It was like essentially a polite phrase for left-wing anarchists at the time, essentially. But I mean, having subscribed to that label for many years, I mean, sometimes there's some utility to utilizing the state, and sometimes there's more democratic feedback on a massive scale, but you can't really rely on that. And then more often than not, it's going to side with capital in almost every instance. I mean, I definitely think a dual power, dual systems approach has a lot of efficacy. And I might even borrow some, I hate to say it, but some concepts from like State and Revolution, where you use the state until it withers away, and you try to replace all its functions with outside structures that then replace all of those structures that were built to furnish capitalism, right? You outclass it and outsize it and outpower it with new structures that are built to serve the people.
What about, okay, so see,
that's ideally the end result is to get rid of it entirely. But not at not at once or whatever.
She mentioned that too. It's like the end result is stateless, classless society, right? For like many anarchists, communists, socialists alike. But yeah, CV, what do you think about People's Green New Deal as like a demand or something like that?
Well, I mean, it's the same problem and the same benefit as something like Medicare for All, which is that on the one hand, very much in the same way that libertarian socialism has sort of like an affective resonance with Americans as something, you could invoke the specter of liberty. And so people who kind of have some sort of attachment to maybe the founding ideals of America, even if they can recognize that the history did not play out that way, you can capture some of those people into it. And so I think in the same way, Green New Deal is really seizing on something that is, salient to the American imagination, something that plays on American history in a way that I think can be very unifying. But also, like Medicare for All, it comes with this risk that anyone can call a policy Medicare for All, and anyone can call a policy a Green New Deal, but that doesn't necessarily make it one. And it can, a policy that is not, in fact, revolutionary and perhaps not even sufficient to allow us to adapt to what is already the impact of climate change. I think that something like that can really happen and take the label and use it to co-opt people's concerns around the climate, and that's a real threat.
Well, like, it kind of reminds me of Obamacare or whatever. Like it should just be a starting point for looking into a social healthcare system, but instead it's like always talked about like, oh, this is it, this is the thing, this is what we did. We're not. You know what I mean? Like when I guess like Hillary on the trail was like, oh, it's perfect. It's not there's nothing wrong with it. It's great. It's like that didn't resonate with people at all. First of all, and like it was just like it was one thing, like it was like sold as this like, all right guys, we're gonna get our foot in the door for universal health care. We're gonna get the ball rolling, and like they stopped pushing the ball right after they got it through the door. But yeah, that's just made me think of that.
And you see very similar types of not particularly radical policies. You know, if Kamala proposes something and says this is Medicare for all, but what it actually is a public option that anyone can buy into, but it preserves the entire system of private insurance and private pharmaceutical development and distribution, then it's not really Medicare for all in all of the important ways, even though, yes, technically all people could theoretically access medical care. It's not really what we mean.
No, yeah.
So can someone break down, like, is the Democratic Party or the Green Party have, like, a specific Green New Deal, like, platform or something? Or is this just a term that's been thrown around haphazardly as of, like, kind of reformist language?
I think it's both right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, right now, because, like, it was something that I think people just started throwing around, right? Like, they just kind of started calling these sets of ideas the Green New Deal. And then whenever it is in wherever place codified and presented, then it's actually
I think
Green New Deal in the physical sense.
If I'm not mistaken, I think AOC as well as Bernie Sanders have both released like policy proposals for a Green New Deal, and so that would answer your question in that way. I know organizations like Socialist Alternative are also calling for a Green New Deal that they define on their own terms. So a lot of socialist organizations go a step further than Bernie Sanders or something and say, not only nationalize these big energy companies, but bring them under like democratic worker control in the process of doing that, and then retool them for a new renewable futures like energy.
Like when I think about it, me and Brad were talking about this a couple episodes ago. I was like, demand, like, it'd be nice to have, instead of just call a state of emergency for climate change, be like, go 50% renewables in like 2 fucking years or something like that, because that shit's doable. We can do that. Like, we got to the moon and fucking did this whole nuclear bullshit race and everything when we needed to. We can do that, but it'd be like, I don't know, at least superficially fucking Green New Deal, I guess, would be that, and like, I guess like the government directly hiring folks, and I don't know if it involves nationalizing companies or creating your own fucking government companies that are able to do that and like fix the energy infrastructure as far as the linchpins we have in, like, what is it, Texas and Oklahoma, where both halves of the country are not really connected except for one little part there, and fucking doing the necessary things to build all the solar energy, the fucking wind energy, and all of the like hydrogen storage that we would need to make that happen, and whatever other energy storage. I don't know. Do they talk about that? Anybody know about their platforms? Bernie and
I don't
AOC?
know a ton about Bernie's. The one that I'm most familiar with is Data for Progress has put out a Green New Deal platform, and I think most of what is in there is also contained in the AOC Bernie Green New Deal, but it's very kind of like endpoint focused, so things like renewable energy by 2035, or like half renewable energy by 2035 is at least in the Data for Progress one. There are things like reducing overall emissions, reducing emissions from passenger transportation, getting fossil-free public transportation by a certain period of time. So a lot of it is very much end goal focused, and a lot of it too is looking directly at public works, which I think is really good, because one thing that AOC has consistently said about the Green New Deal is that it needs to also be a jobs program, because it would be something that we wouldn't outsource, that we could do nationally, that we could create jobs, and I mean, ideally we would take those jobs straight out of the military industrial complex. That's where they need to come from, which is currently our biggest employer is the military industrial complex, and all of its kind of different arms and branches. And so being able to take money away from what is a very actively environmentally destructive program and put it into jobs to make that shift to renewable energy, I think would be really powerful. What I think we're going to get from the state instead is something like cap and trade, or something that allows,
some coal taxes and shit.
Right, things that, just sort of barely shift they certainly don't shift any of the production that's happening, but open up a new green market to basically do the same thing.
The pollutant shit.
I thought you made an interesting point earlier, CV, talking about, you can label something as like the Green New Deal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually enacting all these radical policies that need to happen to save things, and with what you're talking about now. And I think it's just kind of funny in like a very disturbing sort of way to think that the actual New Deal also it wasn't that great, right? Like a lot of redlining policies came out of that era, and all these things that caused like intergenerational wealth gaps between white communities and black communities that have like materially held back a lot of people and built that era of prosperity on the backs of people of color, just like every other era of American prosperity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with something like people who want to transition to nuclear power. I think there are a lot of great things about nuclear power, and then there are the part where we're going to dump all the nuclear waste on like black and brown neighborhoods and reservations and sacred indigenous territory, which is what we did with Yucca Mountain for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, definitely agree, and I think that while there are great things that the state could be doing, I don't really think that there is any reason to believe that they will.
Yeah.
That sucks. That's a real bummer.
Yeah, no, it's that's something like my brother's always he's very pro like nuclear energy, and he's always talking about like, oh well, it doesn't have to be that way and blah blah blah, like they can, there's new things that they can do, and it's like, well, will they?
Yeah.
It's like I understand that maybe the technology could exist that maybe would do that, but would they spend the extra money to do it? Because like when it comes down to it, like that's always the bottom line. It's like, is this going to cut too much into costs? And if the answer is yes, then they're gonna find some sketchy backwoods way to deal with it. Like the classic
Yeah.
Sopranos with the trash situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew a lot of like pro nuclear fission nerds and like in some organizing spaces on the left and stuff like that, and a lot of that just really ignores like how all of that technology and research and the actual production of like nuclear power has disproportionately affected like black, brown, and indigenous people. You think about all the tests, the nuclear tests that they did were all on like places where like there were native tribes in like Arizona or New Mexico, right? Los Alamos is where those tests were performed, or like the Bikini Atolls. Like those are communities that are still to this day affected by the radioactive fallout from all of those tests, and it still continues to this day, like CV said, with where this like nuclear waste is dumped, and it's just like it could be, maybe it could be something good, but it's never been performed in like a
it's yet to be proven.
I'm like highly skeptical based on that trajectory alone.
They just like the other day had to dump more. They're gonna have to dump more Fukushima wastewater because it's like filling up and shit like that. Oh, that brings up. Okay, you done mentioned like
check on
nuclear
Fukushima.
Yeah, you mentioned nuclear fission, and then like. In college and engineering, I did a report, or like a special report. It was like this lefty fucking engineering English professor. He was pretty cool. But anyways, Mr. Black, we did it on hydrogen 3. So like looking at the alternative to fission is the fusion shit, which is obviously like a lot more stable as far as reaction. Yeah, tritium. And then that brings up like, I guess like the fucking international colonization, like the space, they got like the space, what Trump just made like a space fucking force command, right?
Is it still a thing?
Like literally, it was just like a week ago he announced it, I think. Yeah.
Well, no, it was longer than a week. I think it was a couple months, or
was it a couple
It was
months?
like a year
maybe?
or two ago, I thought.
Was
no,
it?
but there was
It
like
was-
a.
There's
But
like
then
a
he
new
said
development.
no, and then
Did
like
do
a week ago
something-
he said yes again.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
He's just picking the ball back up to talk about something else.
Oh, I forgot to mention that there's a bunch of helium-3 or tritium, hydrogen-3, right? On the fucking moon. It's like rife with it, and so that's part of the things that we did in our report was thinking about the international races that will happen to get to the moon and harvest that shit when our after fucking
Once
our
fusion
energy
becomes viable.
and our fucking energy infrastructure.
Well, don't worry, we're gonna die
can
from
go
climate
nowhere.
catastrophe before that's a possibility. So
Yeah. Do you so?
No worries.
You think we'll get something viable in space before that happens? Just an open sci-fi question.
No,
No.
no.
I'm getting a resounding nose. Yeah, I don't necessarily think so either. I mean,
That might be the catalyst.
There's no
right?
evidence to
The tritium
what? Oh, the catalyst to
for space, occupation,
yeah.
colonizing, shit like that. Oh yeah, so like the
And there's water.
F-35.
Isn't there water on the moon too?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't like deuterium and tritium harvested from heavy water, so it's also found at the bottom of the ocean.
That's right. Yep.
So it's typically found in water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably about just as hard to get to the bottom of the ocean as the moon, right?
Probably harder to get to the bottom of the ocean.
And all the pressure, all the pressure.
We've mapped the whole surface of the moon, but we've never been to every part of like the surface of the ocean.
Oh yeah.
Surface of the ocean. That would be the top of the ocean, which
Hey.
is
God, that would be fucking something if we could get to the bottom of the ocean.
But what are the? I mean, there's obviously some
Check out.
cultural impetus or something, or probably some capitalist impetus for us needing to map the moon as opposed to our oceans. Like, yeah, because I don't know, maybe mapping the oceans just means you have to spend more time fucking not raping the oceans or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we won't like what we find down there.
Well, there's no fresh water at the bottom of the ocean.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
That's also part of the
we're gonna
problem.
find some weird
Yeah.
Godzilla type thing down there.
We should do what whales did. We should go back to the ocean. We should say this land thing was a mistake and just go right back in.
It is also like a really easy way, like interest in going out into space to fix our problems is also like an easy way to, like, I don't know, get into a bad headspace about how we should deal with our problems here on Earth. You know, we shouldn't be like, oh well, you know, maybe we can get some stuff out in space to fix this. It's like, well, it's not really viable right here and now.
The thing that has always made capitalism and indigeneity contradictions is that capitalism requires that constant expansion. Like if we don't exist in some sort of, you know, sustainable harmony with the land we live on, we keep needing to chase, you know, other resources and bring them to where we are, or to settle where those resources are in order to sustain ourselves, then yeah, I would say that that's a pretty bad cycle and it doesn't end, and so the expansion will always continue.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
It's like sort of an obfuscation from like the root nature of the problem, right? Like most people living in poverty are never going to see the benefits of like expanded space exploration, right? It's like these pipe dreams of
I know.
of like masturbatory billionaires like Elon Musk and
Yeah.
the guy from Virgin Entertainment or whatever his name is, you know,
Isn't
Richard
it-
Branson or something
okay.
like that.
Yep, Branson.
So
Well, it's like
Yep.
because you kind of have to be a member of the ruling class to have to go to space to find an existential
Yeah.
threat. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they're so
Yeah, they have
unfamiliar with the idea of like their community's extinction that they have to create these like very far-fetched mass extinction scenarios to make themselves vulnerable.
yeah.
Oh man.
Is that the reason why so many white middle class people do like parachuting and stuff? Or I don't know if that's true. Is that the same concept behind that?
I would believe the thrill of your own death decreases with how frequently you have to experience it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like that.
I definitely want to try that sometime, and if I ever get the chance to do like a 0G thing or whatever, I mean, I'm gonna take it. But it's something that most people aren't gonna do in life.
We got the Higgs boson figured out, so we're gonna get this 0G shit going down. Anyway.
Yeah, dude.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I
we're
just
gonna
kidding. I don't know.
we're gonna start to make that artificial gravity, and
Yeah.
we'll really get going.
Centrifugal force, players.
And I'm sure we would already
exactly.
have all of these things if we didn't distribute our NIH and National Science Foundation grants on the basis of who could most effectively market themselves as, you know, innovators
Yeah.
and the next, like, great genius that would solve all of our problems. If we had a little
Yeah.
bit more faith or recognition in the capacity of workers to innovate, then we might not be in this situation.
Yeah, once we stop putting those people in charge all the goddamn time in such big numbers, then, you know, maybe we'll start to see something. But and everything, plugs,
Look,
plugs,
plugs.
plugs.
Like that.
There we go. Am I going first?
Sure.
I have a couple of plugs. I just put out an episode of Hero Worship. It's episode 2 about my grandpa LeBaron, and it's tight. It's a nice little story. And I am working on another episode of Rolling Stone with some new people. Also, anyone out there that does improv comedy and that kind of thing. If you want to play some characters, get a hold of me on. I was about to say MySpace. No, get a hold of me on Twitter at Rolling Stone PD or Revolover Audio on Twitter.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
You got any plugs?
Yeah, I got a plug.
Oh,
I got
yeah.
the check out the IWW GDC, get involved, get some community organizing in that shit, Come on out. We're out here.
When do they meet and shit?
Oh, we meet every 2 weeks, but we also got a study group in between then. We do our free meal. We got bail fund organizing going on. So show up, get out here.
That's what's up.
I would like to plug feeding each other. Just once maybe this week, cook together, be kind and cook together. That's my plug. I think that we should all break bread together more than we do in our organizing spaces. I would like to plug feeding each other as praxis.
Oh yeah. What do I gotta plug? I'm gonna be September 20th. So the breakdown is like at noon. This is for Madison folks. Before noon, the high school students are gonna march from East High to the Capitol. Be there at noon. Noon to 1 is like some kind of concert or something. I don't know if there's any speeches. Folks are gonna congregate, and then 1 p.m. go to MG&E down on Broome? No, it's Bassett. It's Bassett Street. Yeah, it's Bassett Street. Go down there, congregate with a bunch of groups like 350.org and fucking Sunrise Movement and fucking People's Green New Deal group and fucking Sierra Club are involved, and tons of groups. And hopefully be thousands of people like we mentioned earlier there.
Yeah, and the youth are not going to start at the Capitol at noon. They're going to start at MG&E at 1. The adults are planning the concert that is at the square because the youth told us that Friday is an important day for school funding, where they get funding based on how many students they have, and so everyone needs to be there for the first 2 periods. Otherwise, their school isn't going to get any funding next year. So they were like, "All right, well, we're going to stay for that, but then we're out." Which that's a pretty fair decision.
Okay, well, those were high school students as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe they're not. I don't know. Yeah. I
so
guess
they'll just be going straight to MG&E, but there will be a concert for those who are not in school if you would like to attend at the Capitol at noon.
Yeah.
Did you say concert?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
is there like a music group playing or something?
Yeah, just one dude as far as I know.
The way the students yesterday phrased it is like the adults were putting on a concert, so I'm assuming it's like a 1950s doo-wop group is meeting to like rally against
boomers.
Climate change. Yeah.
And it's probably like some NSYNC stuff. That's what they would think is
what the kids want.
Fresh millennial music.
Dated reference.
Yeah, so if you want to be cool, show up at MG&E at 1.
Yeah.
You want to be a boomer.
If you want to get your groove on, then go to the Capitol.
And I got a new song I'm gonna be debuting at down by MG&E. I talked with some folks and gonna get some mic minutes to do my Sissa song. So check that out. And then 1 to 5 at MG&E. Hopefully shit gets militant. And then fucking 5, they're gonna go back up to the Capitol, and there's like pizza being ordered for 5:15 there.
If I'm not mistaken, are they going back to the Capitol at 3 and then?
Maybe.
Ooh, I probably have the schedule from last night. I could pull it
No snap, pull that up. Let's see. I got my single called Pride, which is about no cops and pride, no turfs on our turf. Coming out, dropping on streaming services this Friday.
Is that the one with Sophie?
Yeah, the one with Sophie. Yeah, we did it over here.
We did that at Revolover
Audio Studios. At least the hook was recorded.
The hook, just the hook.
And then I did the rest at Lil Guillotine Studios.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so they're meeting at MG&E at 1. Sorry, I feel like I'm reiterating things that people have probably already said. But 3 p.m. they're marching to the Capitol from MG&E.
Yeah.
And then at 5 is sort of when the occupation of the Capitol will start, and then the permit goes on to 5:45, and I don't know what the plan is after that. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe it'll be a 2011 all over again.
Ooh.
Lots of mutual aid and fucking breaking bread together happened. Got to fucking homeless people had places to stay. The shit was dope.
Nice.
Changed my life.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Let's
go
make
back,
it happen.
Jack.
Do it
Forever.
again.
Yep.
It's gonna happen again, whether or not it starts on Friday. It's gonna happen.
Haha.
It'll happen.
That's right.
It'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so fucking it's this Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Social Justice Center that GDC General Defense Committee is having our meeting, And then one more. Let me just do the IWW meeting. Fucking gotta look it up though.
Hold on.
Can anybody think of
also, I just I forgot to plug. My podcasts are on Anchor FM. So
Right.
when you go Anchor FM /Rolling Stone Podcast or /Hero Worship Podcast.
Bet.
End of plugs.
So it's Monday, October 7th, our IWW meeting is. Also, this podcast is on fucking Anchor and like iTunes.
You're on
and
Anchor now?
Not Anchor. I'm sorry. What's the other one? Strider? I don't know.
Stitcher?
Stitcher. I'm on Stitcher
Oh,
and all
dope.
types of shit. Bunch of different places.
Yeah.
There's one
Go
called
get you
Tune
some Stitcher.
In. Well, yeah, give it a rank, give it a like,
Nice.
give it a review up on iTunes. That's what's up. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. This is Lil Guillotine Podcast. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
Bye.